Hello and welcome to Sports Today. I'm Gargi Raut, and whilst you were catching on some important sleep, a lot happened over the course of the night. To begin with, Nathan Lyon's injury. A lot has been said about it, and for the moment it is not looking good. Nathan Lyon, who was playing his 100th consecutive test match as a bowler, did not fare well on day 2 because he got injured and he happened to have a calf injury on the final session of the second day of the Ashes test match at Lord's. Steve Smith was later interviewed about it, and he said that it's not looking good for the rest of the game, and he might spend the rest of the Ashes on the sidelines, which is not great news for Australia because Nathan Lyon is their only spinner. Again, Ashes comes to the fore. Women's Ashes, Sky Sports has revealed that Women's Ashes has recorded peak viewership for the first time in the history of women's test cricket. This is the first time that a test match in the Ashes tournament, Women's Ashes tournament, was held in a 5-day format, and it recorded the highest viewership for any women's test match in the history of women's cricket, of course. And Sky Sports revealed that the test match recorded a peak audience of over 480,000 viewership. Sourav Ganguly is not happy with what happened at the WTC final, especially Ajinkya Rahane's comeback as the vice captain. A lot had been said about Ajinkya Rahane's return because he hadn't been playing regular and consistent test cricket, but then Sourav Ganguly has now come out and has spoken his truth about it. And he said about Ajinkya Rahane that you have been out for 18 months, then you play a test and become a vice captain. I don't understand the process behind it. There is Ravindra Jadeja, who has also been there for a very long time, and he is a certainty in test matches, and also he is also a candidate who could have been the vice captain. But then you chose Ajinkya Rahane, who had been out for a very long time, for 18 months to be precise. Sourav Ganguly was also asked about Shubman Gill, and he said that of course he was also a candidate, but then the Indian management decided to go with Ajinkya Rahane. Moving on to the world of autosports, let's start with MotoGP. Honda decline is really bad. This is something that Honda's manager Alberto Puig has said in a recent statement, and that he said that the 3 drivers, namely Alex Rins, Marc Marquez and Joan Mir, all 3 of whom are injured at the moment, has been really bad for Honda's success. Not only that, but also that the bike is not performing well. Puig stated that Marc's injuries are worse than before, and because Marc has been on and off on the track for the past 4 years, I believe, and he has been ridden with injuries everywhere, and now he has again been deemed unfit for the race. The other 2 drivers, namely Alex Rins and Joan Mir, are also injured. The manager said that from a mental point of view, Marc Marquez is not happy at all. The bike is not helping either, but Marc Marquez is still trying, and that's why he is crashing out so much. Another news from the world of MotoGP is that MotoGP is considering rule changes to help teams like Honda and Yamaha. This is something that has been done before, and what I mean by a rule change is they are likely to bring back a concessions point system where the teams that accumulate 6 points from the podium finishes, meaning the P1, P2 and P3, will concede the following points to a struggling team in order to help them financially and even with the points, so they have a fair chance at competing in the tournament. The rules aren't clear as of yet, but this has been done in the past before, And to everyone's surprise, you know, Honda and Yamaha were giants in the game, but now they're at a point where they're finishing at the bottom of the list. But Honda and Yamaha were the two teams who were the biggest contributors in the past when it comes to the concession points rule. The concessions, you know, Yamaha and Honda had the biggest contributions before, but now the concessions that we're talking about, that MotoGP is talking about, will also come in form of other freedoms, such as different engines for different riders and financial help, etc., etc. But there is no clarity as of yet on what the rule will be. But there is reports going around that MotoGP is clearly considering a concession system. But at the moment, no teams are on the same page when it comes to concessions, because no team actually enjoys having concessions, because if they score a podium in a season, they won't be eligible for the concessions the following year, which is why everyone is so hesitant about this rule comeback. Moving on to Formula 1, Hamilton wants a massive rule change in Formula 1. Mercedes hasn't been able to compete with Red Bull for the past couple of years. But before that, Mercedes was the team that was dominating for over 4 years. But now Lewis Hamilton isn't happy that Mercedes hasn't been able to compete with Red Bull, and let's be honest, he is being a little salty about it, and everyone knows that Lewis is not a graceful loser. So he has suggested that Formula 1 change the rule where teams won't start, or teams won't be able to start working early on their cars when the season has ended, or when they're on a break between two races. He thinks that everyone should start working on their team the same time. For someone like Red Bull, Lewis Hamilton believes that since they are already so far ahead in the tournament, they should not be allowed to work on their car anymore, which is a little bit unfair in my opinion. But this is what Lewis Hamilton has said, and I quote, "From my personal experience, when you are so far ahead, when you are 100 points ahead, you don't really need to do a lot more development on your car. So you can start earlier on your next car. Maybe that would help everyone move on a little closer." I don't know how I feel about it. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments, please. Of course, now the very controversial Wimbledon poster has come in, it has been launched, and Andy Murray thinks that the Wimbledon poster is a disaster, because clearly there is no women representation, and it features all the Wimbledon winners in the poster. But Andy Murray, who is also a two-time Wimbledon champion, hasn't featured in the poster. But now you can clearly see that Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner are in the front of the list, with Novak Djokovic and Nadal and Federer following behind. But Andy Murray thinks that there is no female representation. Chris Evert and Martina are the only two female representation here, and Serena Williams and Venus Williams are at the very back, which is not fair according to Murray. Murray said it was a disaster, wasn't it? He said he doesn't need to elaborate any more on it, and he thinks that it's pretty obvious that it was a disaster. That is it for today's morning wrap. Thank you for watching. Like, share and subscribe to Sports Today, and don't forget to download the AajTak app.